So I pretty much spoke with everybody except I've got a few more people that I'm getting with this afternoon. Just about our respark calls going into the new year and just being a part of this work. I guess we're going to call it our respark inner circle. I haven't come up with a name for it yet, but the whole point of this is that we're going to be coming together as a group and every week going over the 8 week boot camp again and just very fine comb to detail. Like every time that we speak with a broker or a banker, we know the vocabulary, we know the inflection in our voice, we know what questions to ask, the steps that it takes to get into that, because another thing too is there's some people that have joined a couple weeks ago. There's some people that joined at the very beginning of 2023, right? So it's like there's a huge range and deviation of our members. And so what I want to do is everybody come together and we kind of all start at the same starting line. And then we all just go in lockstep together and just achieve all at the same time and go over questions and thoughts. And everybody, like I want to do something on to where every week, a couple of members are getting on a call together and they're going to be doing like a mock call with a broker or a banker, like getting to know somebody else in our group, right? I don't know what exactly it's going to look like yet. Zane and I are going to work this through, but kind of being able to get over that initial insecurity that I've had in the past, especially meeting with a banker or somebody that you think is smarter than you or understands things more than you or whatever, you're going to be able to kind of get those, first game jitters out, I guess, with somebody that's already in our group like that. So that's kind of what we're trying to build out. And like I said, for the people I haven't spoken with yet, I got to look back. I've got quite a few people that have already all ready to go on that. But I think it's going to be a great thing, and I'm excited to have everybody a part of it because I think it's going to be like, just a really great kind of going into 2025, a great way for all of us together to succeed together. Does anybody have an initial thought or question or anything about that? Zane, you got an opinion?
I just think it's a great idea to get everybody back on the horse. Like you said, lockstep together is a little bit different than what we're used to, everybody going on their own. But I think it'd be great to just use a group, more of a group setting to kind of get everybody down the field. So I think it's a really great idea. And I think 2025 is just going to be absolutely insane. I don't know about anybody else, but me and Nolan and McKinley and everybody else are very optimistic about 2025. That's for sure.
Yeah, like everybody. So like left, right, or indifferent on politics. I think there's just some optimism in the country. I think people are like trending in a direction of like, hey, we can actually make decisions now, whether you are on the fence or off the fence. It's like at least you can now know what's going to happen and you can make decisions based upon what's happened. So politically wise. So again, not right or wrong. So what I would like to do again, I don't have a set in stone again agenda today. My thought really was getting into any weeds or details of deals that people are going over, questions or thoughts that we can work on. Zane, if you got something that's on your mind, whatever it is, I'm look at this as kind of an open book. And I've also already spoken with a couple of guys on my team. I've got another attorney, I got another banker. My accountant's going to come on here. I think I told you guys that. I've got those guys dialed in for January already. So even if you can't make those live calls, you'll obviously be able to hear the recordings of those. But just having the attorney, a different attorney, come on and uh, talk about entity creation, accountant talking about depreciation. Those were at the live call. They remember that. And then again, some bankers talking about, their lending appetites and things like that. So we've got some great group things in 2025, but I wanted to hear if anybody, again, had thoughts, questions, uh, any way that I can, or Zane and I could help you guys if you're working on something now, or um, really anything we can do for you. If it's goal setting, if it's, I'm not really into this like resolution thing. I think it's, you either got to, you don't kind of thing, either that you live in it or not. But we're just, we give a shit. We want everyone to succeed and we want to be a part of, create something really cool together. And so I guess, open it up to any dialogue or thoughts about the new year, questions, deals are working on, whatever it is. Very happy to share a screen, go over everything, and kind of go from there. Open it up to open everyone. Yeah.
I'll ask a question, get it started.
Bring it, man.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like our go-to position on just about any property we see is to first float the concept or the idea of some seller financing, proposing the idea that the seller leaves some money in the deal. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say as often as possible. Yeah.
So that's what I've been doing on my somewhat limited deals. I'm working on like three right now. And so I'm starting to, although the brokers, I'm working with two main brokers right now here in Georgia, and they haven't said it. Neither one of them have said it, but I'm getting just a vibe from both of them that, okay, I wasn't aware that you guys are going to only offer seller financing on every deal you submit an LOI on. And it's not that they're necessarily upset with that, but that's I guess a less likely deal from their perspective to get over the finish line as they see it. And I've tried to explain to them, well, that I can see where you might feel that way, although they haven't really pushed back on it. But I'm sort of kind of commenting on the vibes they're given. Telling them, look, you'd be surprised. A seller may initially not be interested, but once they start looking at the numbers, they might get really interested. So you just never know. Um, is that what have you guys found any commonalities? Here's my question: any commonalities amongst sellers that are open to seller financing? Are there any commonalities, or no? Or is it just kind of you've seen one deal?
Great question. I've got a couple of answers and a couple of responses to that. So the deals that have done seller financing to me, all four of them have been owner users. So everybody that has been um, again, a glass supply, a blind distribution, a antique business, um, last mile pharmaceutical, those guys, they were using the site and also in owning the building. So they were inside of it. So they probably bought it at whatever they bought it for, and they're understanding the tax benefits after I sat down with them, back and forth like that. When you got a group, or especially if you've got a group of like three doctors or whatever, and they formed LLC 1, 2, 3, they're usually just wanting to take the cash and go. And that's where I think the LOI that you can submit that has two offers in it, one that's got a seller finance or leaving money in the deal, and an all cash offer, that kind of like um, uh, fork in the road offer can give them the illusion of choice. And they're like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. Okay, I can do this or this. And then they don't come up with like a response that's like outside of what you offered. And both of them, go to you, right? So when so that I say all that to also move forward and say, I don't know if it was you today. I might have been talking to Dave or whoever it was, but I spend the majority, other than like, working with you guys, time only with borrowing money from banks and raising capital with investors. Now, I'm not ever having them, direct deposit money into my account until we close something if I partner with them. But I am getting verbal commitments as often as I can. I'm always just selling my product, which is the 40,000 feet, 16 clear heights, multiple roll doors, less than a mile off the highway, triple net lease. That's the product that I'm selling to people that have appetite for passive income. And that investor can be anybody. And what I mean is my parents are in their 60s and they've got a lot of equity in their house. And they got a lot of buddies that have equity in their house. And now, I don't like just pitching stuff to my parents, of course, but they also follow me on Facebook and they're like, hey, Nolan, this is kind of cool. I've got $200,000 of equity in my home. Would it, are you, how could I get involved with you? I'm like, look, let's start small, whatever. But I could be saying, look, I'm not even asking you to bring on anything right now, but if you'd like to verbally commit to an amount, it can be $5, it can be 500,000, doesn't matter. I'm going to pick and choose who I want to partner with, of course, from that list of my champions, depending upon how much they want to do, of course. But what I'm getting at is I'm constantly adding to my network of champions. All of my champions, my investors that want to participate in my product or in my deal when that seller financing opportunity does fall through, which is pretty much inevitable. And if you have an investor or a seller that is a group of multiple people versus an owner user. So that's been my experience. On the 12 that I have, it's either 4 or 5 of them. I got to look back exactly on my numbers. It's probably closer to 6. At least half of them have had seller finance, and the other half has been with partnerships. And my partners bringing the deal. And I'll take it a one step further to answer your question. There's 2 ways, and you guys have seen this already, and I'll share the pro forma here. Let's see here. So on the pro forma, I'll make this a little bit bigger. So just on this kind of syndicate or seller finance model like this, I might even think there's a third door here, and it depends upon your appetite. So I would almost look at this question from like answering your question directly, Richard, versus like, how other people think. But depending upon your limited partner's appetite, I would try and make this split 50-50. And you've already heard me talk about that, where you give the sell or you give your LP all of the cash flow until your principal is repaid, till their principal is repaid. That opens up another door of the type of property to purchase and things like that. But it allows you to take a larger equity slice. So if you do ever sell, you get a larger share of the profit. But you also, on the front end, you get a larger share of the depreciation. And Richard, I know you're a big, you're in sales. So taking any type of depreciation against your income is like almost dollar for dollar on the refund on your taxes. So I like to position any time that I can a 50-50 model. Now it depends upon your limited partner's appetite again, but you can say you can have 100% of the cash flow. I'll get 50% of the equity. I'll do all the work, and you get all of the cash flow until your principal is repaid. And so, or again, you can do this syndicate model, which is like a traditional waterfall that you guys can all have on your pro forma. So this is my personal opinion. I don't care about the cash flow. The cash flow is a byproduct of buying it right. The cash flow is one thing down the road for me. I want the tax benefits. That's the most important piece for me. So I'm always trying to negotiate larger equity slices and give away the cash flow to other people in order to take depreciation. So that's all that to say on your question.
Yeah. So you went way down the road. I was really just wanting to know, and that's all good information. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So what I've not been doing is offering a 2-pronged LOI. I've just been doing the seller financing piece, but it sounds like what I need to also offer is an option of an all cash. So they've got so it doesn't, and also from the broker relationship standpoint, they don't feel like I'm just only a seller finance guy,
right?
So that's helpful. That's very helpful. So
we have an example, or we have a template for that 2-pronged LOI too that we can share with you.
I mean, is that what we should be doing on all our LOIs? Is doing the 2-prong approach?
I mean, I've got I don't have it. I gotta figure out where I put it. I could pull it up maybe.
I think a good move.
But yeah, go ahead, Zane.
Sorry, I think a good move might be like if you've heard that they're totally uninterested in seller financing, give them the 2-prong approach. If they're open to seller financing or have some kind of inkling towards it whatsoever, just offer the seller financing approach. And that might be a good way to kind of determine which one to go with.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah. So here, check this one out. Here's what it would look like. So this is an LOI that I submitted on a building in Maryland back in November. And we might get this deal. I don't think it's going to happen for another couple of months because the lady's got a 1031, but we offered option A or option B. And I want to show you something too. Look at the vocabulary. I think this is like really good. Please choose from one of the following purchase options. I think that's like I even called my guy Matt back afterward, who you might have met, Matt Devon, Richard, at the live event. He was a fancy guy with
Yeah, maybe.
yeah. Matt's a good guy. He's from Philadelphia. But I was like, Matt, that is strong. I like that vocabulary. Please choose from one of the following purchase options. It's almost like there is no other way. There's not a third door. It's
Right.
my way or it's my way, one or the other. But you can see, you know, gave him this, consideration, seller note, or we offered it at like a 13 cap rate with cash, that kind of thing. So,
Can you share that LOI with us?
of course, yeah,
Or
absolutely.
is
I'll put it on
it's not already out there yet? That'd be great. I
yeah, I'll
like
put
that.
it on the I think I even signed this one. Yeah, I've already signed that one. Yeah. So I'll share this one on school so y'all can get your eyes on it. But and Zane has one of those too, right, Zane?
One of those what?
Just like that kind of that dual prong. I like how you worded that, Richard. Like kind of
Oh,
two
yeah.
pronged LOI. Kind of, I'm gonna write that down. I kind of like the vocabulary of
Yeah.
that.
I was gonna write that down too.
Two pronged LOI. Um, because it just like it I like the idea of it giving the seller multiple options. And like I said, if you're constantly, raising capital with investors like that, and you've got this deal that's checking at 12.5 cap rate with a 6-year lease, that's strong right there. And then you can really determine the seller's motivation. You can really determine how motivated they are to really sell.
And
Well, I
Nolan,
just think that helps. Yeah, I just think it helps in your relationship with your brokers too. You don't come off as this guy that is just going to do seller financing all the time. That's all he's interested in. That we can do it either way. We'll give them an option, and I think that keeps all of the options on the table. And they may not like the offer, either one of the two pronged offers, but at least we're giving them a couple of different ways to look at our LOI.
Well, yeah, and not to mention too, now that we've got Michael with his cool earnest money financing, I mean it candidly it truly allows us to get into buildings really for like I mean literally no money. I mean it's
Yeah,
have him finance the earnest money, have the bank in that first position, wrap that cost into the debt. I mean, it's all coming together, which I think is kind of crazy, which is cool.
yeah.
and I have another question actually on that same exact topic, especially on Richard's first question that he had about seeing if the seller is willing to finance the down payment on the front end versus doing that on the back end. I was actually just having a conversation with Brian Villanueva, he's on here, yesterday about that, and he just tries sometimes to just come out directly with the broker as soon as they send him the deal and say, is the seller willing to finance the down payment? And then other times we kind of try to work the deal, learn more about it, and then once we're ready to make the offer, we just offer seller financing on the back end and kind of educate them on why it makes sense to do it that way, like through the LOI. So Nolan, would you, I know it might be kind of a complicated answer, but recommend like not wasting time on the front end and asking if they're open to it, or going in and educating them on the back end, taking more time, but perhaps turning somebody who's not open to it into somebody who is now open to it?
I think there's two answers. The first is that the when I was I felt like when I was first just offering seller financing, I was getting kind of like Richard, like some more like, is this guy for real? Like, kind of responses. Then I would go tie the deal up. After I tied the deal up and the guy couldn't squirm, he couldn't go anywhere. Like I just had to go close it. Or, in that first 45 days where the earnest money wasn't hard yet, I would go spend a lot of time, not a lot, but like a day educating the seller on using that one pager, getting down to the bottom of it, like what's your tax situation? Like you know, knowing exactly how much taxes he's going to pay, and then positioning to him how and why it makes sense to leave money in the deal. And remember, the seller leaving money in the deal is not like the end all be all, but what it does is it allows you to keep more ownership. It just does. Like you're using more debt, but you're keeping you keep more ownership for yourself versus having to split it up with somebody else and give cash flow away. That's why and not to mention you bring less money to the deal, which increases your cash on cash return. So like that, and that's why I'm like, I don't really care so much about the cash flow, even if I'm servicing debt, whatever, because it's an infinite return. Like you can do unlimited deals at that point if you're not having to consistently bring money to deals. But there's the two thoughts really I would say, Zane, is if you tie the deal up first, and then now you're in underwriting, then I would, or at least in due diligence, then I would go and sit down with the seller and I would lay out, hey, this is how and why. Get them enthusiastic about what you're doing. Have confidence about the project that you're about to take on, how you're going to do this, how it's going to do this, whatever it is, and get them excited about how we're a partner. Remember, it's you and I on the same team. We're taking down Uncle Sam. He's the bad guy here. It's not us. The
Mhm.
government's the bad guy trying to take money out of your pocket. And again, we work that vocabulary. So we'll do that in the Respark program. But understanding that it's the government is the bad thing. And then, of course, when he says, okay, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds like a great opportunity. Then we say, on top of that, for that other capital gains that you have, we have another project that you might have interest in. And if it's not ours, we have 1031 brokers that we can introduce you to help you reduce your tax liability to zero. Because again, you're trying to create an this is philosophical, but like create an oxytocin release in that seller's brain, which is the bonding chemical. You want that guy to be on your team. It's like Never Split the Difference. Chris Voss, great book. If you have, like, world renowned negotiator, get an oxytocin release where that guy is like saying, man, this is right. This is exactly what I want to do. Then you guys are on the same side of the table together, taking down Uncle Sam. He's the bad guy, and you guys are partners. So if you educate them and you focus on providing them a solution to their situation, not only are they going to agree to what you're doing and say, yeah, this is actually a great move. And then you say, don't listen to me, go talk to your accountant. His accountant's going to say, wow, this actually is a pretty good offer, John. He's going to come back and say, hey, is it okay if I actually leave more money in this deal? And that will happen more often than not because you've already created a bond with them. And then they want to become partners with you because you didn't position yourself as the bad guy, but as a teammate, and the government's the bad guy. Because they already know when they're selling that the government is coming. They already know that. So when you come out of the gate not trying to be an adversary, but say, like, look, I'm aware of your situation. Let's find a way to reduce that situation down to zero. You've hit their pain point before you said anything about yourself and what you're trying to accomplish. You made it all about them. Then you got them fish in a barrel, if that makes sense. Does
I
that answer
think you're
your
really
question?
on. No, I
Yeah.
think you're really onto something there. I think if we can position ourselves collectively when we're each out going and working on deals, and then when we come together to close a deal, that if we're talking in terms like this, that hey, Mr. Broker, I want you to show me some properties, and here's what we're looking for. But we're more than just buyers or investors. We are, as you've said before, kind
Seller
of
consultant.
seller
Seller
consultants, right?
consultant. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
What was that?
Seller
That's
consultant.
Yeah, seller consultants. So
Yeah.
we're actually going to help. Not only are you and I, Mr. Broker, gonna work some deals together and have some success, but it's gonna help enhance your relationships with these seller brokers as well. In that you're going to be helping their seller avoid the tax exposure because we're going to be consulting them in lots of ways. So it's going to be a win-win for all of us. So help us identify the deals where it's going to be good for you, it's going to be good for us, obviously, but also for the seller and his broker. We're all four of us going to be sitting on the same side of the table,
That's
making
right.
sure that taxes are eliminated, cash flows where it needs to go, all of these things, and we can bring all of the components to bear. Like you said, the 1031 brokers, we need to bring that to bear, whatever. I just think it makes us look like we got a team. I think the fact that I'm in sales, been doing it for 30 years. The team approach is always better than being by yourself, in
That's
my
right.
opinion. Because not only does it present better, but when whoever's buying or on the other side of the table from you, when they see that you've got the expertise and the resources to bring to the table to help them too, then they're more likely, more inclined, as you said, to have that oxytocin release, and the trust factor goes up too. I think.
Oh yeah. Oh man, you
Anyway,
nailed
so I like that. I
it.
think you're on something there.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great. Does anybody else have an opinion on that, or a thought or a question about that, or disagreement? Maybe, I don't know. Anything?
I have a question if nobody else does.
Yeah.
I got a question actually.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
Something as Zane, we were talking about this the other day when we were talking about, I was asking, how are you getting access to have these discussions with the sellers? At what point does that come?
Well, out of the gate, that's a great question because a lot of young brokers or maybe newbie brokers have this initial fear that they want to they want to be the representative, they want to be in charge, they want to be the face of the seller and the deal, whatever. It's in my experience, it's a very amateur approach. Now, not talking about any of your guys, Brian, of course, or anyone else's, but when you develop this sense of, hey, I can actually get deals across the finish line, but candidly too, I just don't give a shit what people think. I'm just going to go do it. So the brokers are going to say, hey, you can or can't talk to my client or whatever. I'll just like roll up to the building and say, hey, I'm looking at this property here. Or I'm looking at this over here. And the guys are there. Like, I don't care what the brokers say. Because again, they're not the ones that are taking on any risk. Honestly, they're not the ones that have borrowed money. They're not the ones that have, again, started a business. They're just representing somebody else that's taking risk. So not derogatory. I just don't care what people that aren't taking risks opinions are, if that's fair, right? They wrote the document up and they did a couple of things. I'm the one that's taking the risk. I'm the one that's putting myself out there. So that's that thing. So to answer your question though, when you develop that relationship with your broker, which will come and which, is inevitable, you say, hey, what is this guy's cell phone? I want to get him a coffee or whatever. I want to sit down and talk about the financing aspect, especially once your broker understands it, especially, and we can go over the dialogue that you can even sit down with your broker first to help him comprehend what you're doing and why your offer makes so much sense. And that way, when you go and again, when he goes and speaks with other sellers, he'll be able to be like a huge advocate of what you're doing. So it will come even further when, like with Richard said a second ago, we have our two-prong LOI. You can have one LOI says, hey, look, or, we'll give you the $2 million for this all cash, or we'll offer it at $2.5 million with the seller finance or the seller leaving money in the deal. And then they're going to become even a more advocate for two reasons. Number one is that they understand why you're offering with seller finance because it's a tax move. Most of these brokers, not a lot, but some of them are not the savviest investors themselves. They're salesmen. But also, if they can't, again, I just lost my train of thought. But yeah, well, once they understand that they understand the product and what you're selling them, or what you're selling to the seller, they're going to be much more inclined to want to do the deal with you because they understand what product that you're selling. If that makes sense. Versus you say, hey, here's my two offers. Oh, and here's my other piece. A $2 million commission versus a $2.5 million commission is different. So they're going to be much more inclined to be all about the higher offer, of course, that leaves money in the deal versus somebody that's just buying it at $2 million with cash. So if you can educate them and have them understand the second position mortgage, because I'll be honest, even myself, I didn't even know what a lien was until like 2019. I didn't know what a mortgage lien or a tax lien was, but now I can understand there's multiple lien positions. It's like you can educate your brokers on lien positions and how this can make sense for the seller and the buyer. They're going to become a much more advocate of what your offer and your LOI is, if that answers your question.
Makes sense.
Awesome. What did you have on your mind, Zane?
Yeah, I was actually on TikTok and I saw Mike and Bo's video. I know some of you guys were probably here when we had Mike and Bo on as visitors,
I gotta get
to come,
back on. Yeah.
yeah, as guests to come and speak about what they do. They're over in Arizona. Anyways, they made a video about a way to get in front of the seller. However, of course, it's after due diligence, after the contract period starts. But they say that they ask to go and check out the building and check the doors on the building, like every door on the building, specifically with the seller. Like they requested to do that because the seller like knows their building better. They're the owner of the building, so they want to go in there and check the doors, like make sure they all work with them, specifically so that they can go and they can pitch seller financing while they're there. So during the contract period, Nolan, do you have to kind of like finesse your way in there like that, or can you literally just be like, seller, I want to talk to you?
There's no rules when you're like under contract like that. The contract or the due diligence period is just you literally underwriting the building, getting your financing lined up, the whole song and dance. And it's really an inspection period, but you can of course get what I like to do. I don't know exactly what number it is. I like it where receive. I got it on here somewhere. I'm looking exactly, but basically, okay, here it is. Phase number 2, if you got it pulled up, your acquisition blueprint. But if you pull up number 34, schedule inspection to find property or on property to find defects, and then number 35, retrade the price because of defects that you discovered. So during that point in time, you spend $1,000 to inspect that property, and again, it's always worth it because you're going to get a much better understanding of the actual piece of property that you're going to purchase. But you can always save yourself with that, like at least $1,000. Like at least you can usually go back and retrade them. Because also too, what they'll do is like I did this on a deal. I'm actually selling this like this week if we get to the finish line, which I think we will. But I was being sold a building. I was being sold. So those that went on the lot on the it's Appaloosa Drive. It's the one that I did this rehab to and stuff. And I'm actually selling it, I guess, on Tuesday. But when I was initially sold the building, it was 12,000 feet, 12,000 square feet. That's what I was being sold. So I was being sold at a price per foot. And then when we go into inspection period, I got an inspection, did the whole thing, blah, 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 blah. It actually came back that the real square footage was like just under 10,000 square feet. So I was able to retrade the price on that by like $85,000. So I spent $1,200 on, like, had nothing to do with the actual inspection of the property. It was because I was overpaying according to the market, and that's just what we negotiated. So I dropped that price down like another $85,000 because I spent $1,200 just on an inspection and kind of like the appraisal and everything as the bank was doing it. So I think it's always worth it to get an inspection. I'm trying to think about how I went on that tangent there, but
It's about it's about getting in front of the seller.
how to meet with the owner users, or what was it? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just wondering if under the due diligence period, once you get it under contract, if it's just easy to get in front of the seller because we all know
I
that
think it's very easy to get in front of the seller. I think it's incredibly easy where you just tell your broker, give me this guy's cell phone, and they're working for the deal, right? Like both brokers, if you think about it, like they're working for their clients, but they're really representing the deal. Like you're your own person, they're your own person, they're representing you, but they're really representing getting the deal across the finish line. And if they want to get that deal across the finish line, you request something, they have an obligation to get you that information. I mean, so, and I wouldn't stop. And also too, and I go a step further, and if they don't get you that guy's information, you just don't hire him again. And I'd just be aggressive about it. I'd be like, if you don't, almost like not an arrogance, but just in like an oozing confidence. Like, this is my town, this is my deal. Give me this guy's information because I'm either gonna call somebody else or we're gonna close this and I'm not gonna call you again. And then they're gonna be doing anything to work for you. This is like takes a little bit of time to muster up that courage, I'd say. But once you get that relationship with your broker like that, man, I'm telling you, it goes a long way because then they're going to be like, hey, this is all the information for this seller. Give them like now when I go with Sam will just send me this guy's information, and I usually meet him while I'm walking the site before I even place an offer anyway. So I've already like been in contact. I already get their information before I even submit an LOI. So it depends on the deal, of course, but I try and get like straight to the source, like as quickly as possible. Name with a face, super nice. Shake their hand with a firm handshake. Just be, an upstanding person, that kind of thing. And it goes a long way, especially those guys that are like maybe, retiring or selling their business and doing the whole thing. That can go like a really long way, if that answers your question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the two parties that are really most important are the buyer and the seller, right?
That's right.
They're the ones at risk. They're the ones exchanging the money, and you just got representatives of the brokers on the other side. So, I don't think it's really arrogance. It's just, back in the day, there weren't brokers. There were just buyers and sellers. So,
Yeah, seriously.
I couldn't agree more. I think the more we ask for that on the front end, look, I need, at the end of the day, we're hoping to close this deal. Let me go ahead and get this guy's information because he's going to have questions. I've got questions. Let's just cut to the chase. And I want you to represent it, but don't get in my way either.
Mhm. We're all about efficiency in our business. Ba 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 ba. Most importantly, though, is if you want this deal to get across the finish line, I got to get with this dude. So,
Yep.
especially
Hey
after,
Nolan,
yeah.
Nolan, this is Michael Musgrove. I'm under April's tag.
Hey, man.
She's my secretary, and she helps me a lot with all this stuff. So, and she knows the how to do the computer, so she knew how to set up all this. So I apologize.
Love
So
it.
I'm April, but I'm actually Michael Musgrove. Hey, changing gears, do you guys ever do option contracts where you'll put the property under option and then try for like a year and then try to lease it out to gauge the market of whether it will lease or not before you try to purchase it? That's one of my bigger problems. I do a lot of college rentals and I know what I can rent out in college towns, but I don't know what I can rent out as a commercial space. So I'm a little reluctant to go and try to purchase something and then it sit vacant for 3 or 4 years. So do you guys ever put option contracts on deals?
I like where your head is with the option. I've done a couple options in the past, and it was not on commercial, it was on residential property, and it was also to sell the option. So I was on the other side of that coin. But to answer your question, that's where your relationship with your broker really comes into play, where he knows the market interest or he knows the market rent per foot. He knows what types of tenants that are wanting to occupy that space, especially if it's vacant, or he understands, hey, he's got an attorney that can review the lease that says, hey, there's 3 years left on this thing. They've got 2 3 year options, and then you can gauge their desire to renew that lease when their option is coming up for renew. So I don't really, well, I take that back. You can definitely do an option on a deal. The way that I would do it though is during your due diligence, I would speak with that tenant to gauge their interest in renewing the space. Or while you're walking the site, you see there's a bunch of old carpet. It's a 1970s building. Everything is dated. The AC is not working, right? You can get a better understanding of like the situation. At that point, I'd say, okay, this guy's definitely not going to renew. And then you can make your offer on the building based upon that building being vacant, which is a lot less than if it's occupied, right? So I don't I don't know. I mean, the option on like a vacant space would be a good move, right? You can say something like we've done another guy in our group, Zane, who is it? I forget. Maybe it's I forget who exactly it is. Somebody's doing like an option where they made two offers, or they made kind of a two-prong offer, and it was like, hey, I'll buy it at this price if it's vacant in a year, or if you like to go and release the space at this market rent per foot, and I approve the lease and I approve the tenant, then and he paid like $6,000 for that option. So he didn't really take on any risk. And if something goes sideways and it expires, he lost $6,000, but he's not tied into, having to finance $1 million deal, and moving forward. So I
Right.
think there's a couple sides of that coin. Does that
Yeah, and
answer?
I was talking to Zane about this a little bit. I usually don't use brokers or real estate agents. I usually just go and find the properties myself, and usually it's dilapidated properties. So I'm looking at warehouses now that have been vacant for 10, 15 years, but still has a good property and good shelf buildings. But I would have to do some renovations to them. But I really just don't know how much something like that would rent for. So, and again, I'm not using mortgage broker. I mean, I'm not using brokers. I'm just kind of just going out and doing it for myself. So I didn't know if getting a option on the property and then going and putting it out for lease, or a build to suit kind of thing, and then seeing where it could go from there.
Well, let me ask you a question. I'm curious, like, what's your hesitation with working with the broker? Because now I'm actually really just curious, like because if you can have somebody that can tell you what the rent per foot is, the market, and or you got a contractor that can ballpark it what it's going to cost to get it up to, certificate of occupancy, then you can be able to actually back into your numbers versus having to figure it all out yourself. What's your hesitation with not having a broker kind of on your team?
Usually get a hell of a lot cheaper.
You're not paying for that though. The seller is.
No, but if the broker gets with the buyer with the seller, he's going to say, "I think we could sell this thing for $2 million." You go up to somebody that's grandpa that doesn't, not really sure what the market is, and you just say, hey, I'll give you 700 for it, you're getting it for 1.3 million less.
Sure, sure. No,
That's
definitely not opposed to saving a million three. Yeah. I think that again, you got to do what you think is the best move. I have my personal opinions. I lean on my brokers for a lot of stuff. Like I don't when I've got a question about something I don't know the answer to it, I've got a guy on my phone that knows the answer. That kind of thing. So I don't I don't try and do it solo, which is not right or wrong. Um, but to answer your question, then my best bet, especially if you're going to try and release it, at least have like a contractor or a leasing agent on board where they can be like, hey, I know that I'm not leasing it right now, but if I do, this is what the market rent per foot is in this area. That way you can kind of, reverse engineer yourself into, the math and what the actual intrinsic value of the building is, based on
Yeah,
the
and it's not that I have anything against brokers. I may start using them. My hesitation with that is that whenever there's a broker involved, you're one of many, many investors that are looking at the deal. So I guess then what makes your offers more attractive than any other investor that's just out there?
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's where, like I mentioned a minute ago, just having that relationship with your broker to where you are the first guy that he thinks of. Like I said, you know, I'm not an expert or the number one guy in town, but I've got like two guys that I run with that when there is a deal that pops into my very tiny little window of buy box, I'm the first person that they think of. I'm the first person that they call because they know that if it fits into that thing, they know that they're guaranteed to get paid. So that's kind of my, I guess, relationship with my guys after I had spent multiple hours over coffees asking about their family. I've been to their weddings. I was at one of the guys' daughter's baptisms like 2 months ago, right? One of my bankers. So I guess what I'm getting at is I have really hammered, in my opinion, focused on my assembling of my team, and I really, really lean on all of their expertise versus me trying to just do everything myself because I'm not very smart. I went to public school, number one, and then I also don't have the bandwidth to try and dance around, especially when I got two kids at home too. So that's just my personal opinion. I'm not saying that you're right or wrong. I've just taken the approach of not wanting to do anything and hire out experts and let them do and be a focusing on delegation to expertise, and then I can focus on raising capital with investors and borrowing money from banks. That's kind of been my one-off way of approaching it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally understand. I think you've obviously done well with it, so I'm going to try it out myself.
No, no, I love it. And of course, any way I can, work with you on your ideas too. If you find a $2 million building that's for 700, please freaking call me.
Yeah, yeah. I plan to. I
That's
do a lot.
awesome.
I buy a lot of foreclosures, and I come across stuff a lot. I was telling Zane about one that I was able to look at a while back that I could have bought for half of what it's going for now. So,
Wow.
but I'll definitely be in contact with you whenever I come across those again.
Bring that on,
And
man. I love it.
and Nolan, Mike was actually telling me the other day that when he joined, he had um, uh, an existing foreclosure. And Mike, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but it's a building that's vacant right now, but it's a foreclosure, and it's on the market listed through brokers. Is that correct, Mike?
That's correct. Yes.
And I was telling him that the best first move probably was to go contact a trusted leasing agent who doesn't have an existing interest in the results of this deal, like one of the existing brokers would. But go and finding a leasing agent and asking them their opinion on the market rents in that area for a building like that. Do you think that that would be the best first move in this case, Nolan? Just if it's a vacant building,
Is it in pre-foreclosure?
Mike?
No, it had already foreclosed. It foreclosed back in February. It foreclosed for $1 million, and I just didn't do enough commercial real estate to know whether it was worth $1 million or not.
Okay.
They have an offer on it for 1.75 million. The guy told me that I could buy it for 1.8 million, but again, I just don't know what the market rent is over there, so I'm kind of a little hesitant. I might be able to redeem the property for well, for 1 million plus 12% interest anyway, but that takes a lot of legal work to have to do. But my biggest problem is, and my biggest hesitancy with commercial real estate is just not knowing the market of what something will rent and how long something will stay vacant. I can't stand vacancies. I'm in a college town, so I almost have zero vacancies ever. So I just hate something sitting there for years with me paying interest on a mortgage on it.
Sure. No, I mean you and I both think everybody in the group is in the same boat. We hate vacancies, right? Like that's the devil's word is vacancy. I think when we focus on that style of real estate with those must-have metrics, I think I've said it before, but the reason why we focus on the 10,000 to 40,000 feet, all those metrics, is because that's the largest tenancy pool of small businesses in the United States. There's about 1.2 million small businesses that have gross revenue between $2 and $10 million. And of those businesses, the most popular owner user or rentable space is those four must-have metrics: 10 to 40,000 feet, 16-foot clear heights, multiple roll doors, less than a mile off the highway. So to respond to what you're saying, if you focus on finding the largest tenancy pool, which will de-risk the deal and make it more bankable, because you've got much less risk for vacancy because you're buying the most the most tenantable space, usually you're not going to have to deal with vacancies for multiple years in a row. And if you go a step further, like what Zane said, having that leasing agent that is consistently talking with business owners, like for example, if you're looking at 20,000 feet, you have a leasing, like what my leasing agent does is if he knows I've got something coming on the books that's going to be, again, 30,000 feet, right? Or whatever. He's calling businesses in 50,000 feet. And he's calling businesses in 20,000 feet. Hey, I've got something coming up that's 30,000 feet. It's over in this location. It's near your spot. It's right off the highway. If you're in 50,000 feet, are you looking to sell? Are you looking to, condense a little bit? You looking to get into something in 30,000 or somebody that's in 10,000? Hey, looks like you're expanding your business. Would you like it to get into 30,000 square feet? We can give you a good deal on rent, whatever. But constantly having both angles being worked in that largest tenancy pool, then you know that you've really, really de-risked the deal on paper, and you've given yourself, and you've made it incredibly bankable. You're giving yourself the best shot to, again, reduce vacancies, which AKA reduces cost. So does that answer your question?
It does. Now, when you say a highway, I know, of course, the interstate, but when you say highway, does it need to be a 4-lane highway or a 2-lane? Any like
It does. It could be a state highway, right? It doesn't have to be like, Highway 40 West or East or whatever. It didn't have to be one of those. I like to have thinking about like a traffic count that's got like 10,000 cars a day or something, right? Like where you just
Yeah.
got visibility versus something that's just like a one-off country road that there's 300 cars that run by there a day, or most importantly, you have to have your tenants need velocity to get onto the interstate for their distribution business or whatever it is. The more stoplights or the further off that they are, it just costs them time, costs them fuel, costs them money. So I just try and make it as efficient for my tenants to succeed and make money. So therefore, when they come up with their lease renewal or they don't have any options to renew, they don't want to leave anywhere. They want to stay with me and keep renting from me. That's kind of how I came up with that.
Gotcha.
And one more thing on that. I'm looking, Nolan, at the CRE contacts list, and I'm looking at Greg Wallace, who's the broker slash leasing agent. Is he still in this area, or is he the one that left to Huntsville?
Yeah, Greg is up in he's in Huntsville now.
Yeah.
So our new guy, I've got a couple of new guys. I've got a really good guy that I need to include on. And I'll have him on too. His name is Rich Van China. His last name is Van China, which is kind of funny. He even laughs about it. But he's a super guy, like 25 years in the business. I mean, just murdering it, like really crushing it. And so would love to, I'll have him on too. He's leasing another one of my spaces and selling another one of my buildings. So he's actually, I put an offer in, I did a video a week or so ago over in Helena, and we put an offer in on that building. So
Cool.
like met him Met him. I kind of told the story before. I'll spare you guys, but met him because I was at a football tailgate and I was just outgoing and I met a residential broker. Residential broker introduced me to their main broker. Their main broker, after I met her, introduced me to Rich. And what do you know? We're making offers on $2 million buildings like 2.5 weeks later, So being outgoing like that does not hurt.
And I know you've recently met him, so he might not know a lot about what we're doing here in the collective, but do you think that he'd be open to members who are in this area in Alabama or near Birmingham reaching out to him and asking if they have any, if he would like to help them lease up a spot that they're looking at?
He'd be all about it, all about it. He'd be all about it.
Well, Mike, I'll put you in touch then, and whatever we can get that information.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Anybody else as we kind of get moving out of here? I know we're getting down to the end of the day. It's Friday. We got Christmas coming up next week and everything. I think we got a call scheduled for next Tuesday. I think I'm going to bail on that. I think Tuesday is Christmas Eve. So I'll just like decline that, and then we'll just pick back up the following week, and we'll kind of go from there if everyone's good with that. Cool.
Sounds great. Have Merry Christmas, everybody.
Well, I appreciate everyone making it on today. If anybody has thoughts or questions, whatever it is, holler at me. I'll be on standby. Zane and I are already here. Merry Christmas to everybody. All right. Thanks for making it today.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, guys.
All right. See you guys. Thanks.